Daniel, how are you?
Pyotr, my friend, how are you? Doing well.
I'm good. It's good to see you. Goodness me, the past few days,
Last
past
few hours,
week.
man. There's been stuff happening like crazy today.
Well, I'm just trying to take it slowly, build the anticipation of what we're going to talk about. But yes, exactly. The past few hours, we are going to pay the price. Apparently, if we are Iran, according to Donald Trump, he's going to hit them again tonight. I mean, let's just get straight into it. Do you think that's actually going to happen, or is this Trump playing
Well,
war?
listen, I'll tell you, because just a few minutes ago, 30, 40 minutes ago now on True Social, Trump posted this. He said, last month I directed our great military to execute a secret mission to take oil tankers. And he goes on to say how he's got 100 million barrels of oil through there, et cetera. And he says this wildly successful effort is because the United States of America controls the Strait of Hormuz, not Iran. Their military is defeated. Their economy is lost. It's over for Iran. Now, that's where he ended it. Thank you for your attention to this matter. But one wonders, is he going to use that to say, well, I don't need to bomb them now. I've already won. I just said so in this True Social. We're hoping, me and several other like-minded folks are hoping that this is a prelude to him walking this back again. I mean, I've never been praying for a taco more than I ever have today. And it's Wednesday, not Tuesday, but still better late than never, because if he goes back to bombing, and he told Trey Yingst on Fox News this morning on a phone call that he was specifically going to hit energy infrastructure in Iran. And we all know what that means, what Iran's going to do in retaliation. And it's catastrophic for the global economy. So one's hopeful that he's not going to do it. That's why I got my fingers crossed, but I'm hoping that's what that signals.
Yeah, it just strikes me very strange, even more than usual. Well, apart from the beginning of the war, I guess, that we've had such a change of mind from Trump and other people that there was one piece that I noted said that he had made his comments, and then afterwards he had been spoken to by Joint Chiefs of Staff Kane and Hegseth, and they had essentially talked him into making those strikes on certain targets within Iran. But once it became clear to the Iranians that the Americans were striking things that, let's be honest, Daniel, the targets were a dam and what seems to be his non-military sites, unless they supplied military barracks or something, but like pretty loose, arguable response, right? And so the Iranians were saying that we're responding with proportionality to America's self-defensive strikes after the Apache downing. So the whole thing just seems like a knee-jerk reaction from Trump as usual. And he decided he changed his mind on a moment's notice, much like I think he did with this whole war. Is that where you think we are right now, or is it more a case of just he does have a greater plan in mind?
Listen, here's what we need to understand just categorically. And I've talked to way too many people with very high access in the Pentagon and the White House here just of late, even the last 5 or so days, one earlier today. There is no cognition ability in President Trump anymore to make rational, cognitively intelligent decisions. I literally just had Robert Barnes on our show, who worked for Trump as a lawyer in 2020. And he said that the Trump that he knew then was sharply focused on understanding an issue. He was a voracious consumer of information, would listen to all the details, understood the complexities of things, and would ask a lot of follow-up questions. He said that man is gone. He said now then the guy here is ruled by fear of all kinds of things, irrational fear. Some of it's not irrational, but he can't make a decision. He called him deal incapable now. That's according to Robert Barnes, and he's got somebody that still has access to pretty high up in the White House. And he said it's just driving people crazy up there because he'll seem to make a decision in one place. He'll have told the staff that, okay, we're going to do this, something that makes sense. And they're like, all right, ready to do it. And then like this morning, Rapid Response, which is an official U.S. White House X account, published a video from, I think it was last night, of J.D. Vance saying that we are really close to a deal. We're working out with something with the Iranian side. It's going to be good for America, et cetera. And I have good information that was true, that he was close to a deal. I had talked to some Iranian folks that have access to their negotiating teams, and they said, yes, we are close to a memorandum of understanding, not a final deal, but something that can get us into the negotiating path. And they said both of us agreed to that. And then Trump pulls the plug on it. The White House publishes it. I think it was like 10 o'clock this morning, that JD Vance from last night. And then about an hour later, Trump goes on to White House, which you referred to, and said, yeah, we're going to go back and bomb more today. So, and now we have this Truth Social 40 minutes ago. So who knows what's going on? But he said, Robert told us every time somebody gets in one ear, he says one thing, and then another ear, something else. And there's all these fears, and he just cannot come to a decision. So in that regard, the fear is, my fear anyway, is that at one point he'll give an order to the White House, and before somebody else can give him a good fear about how bad this would be, that the order gets executed. Because once that happens, then it's out of anyone's control. As long as he can taco out of this one, and I'm begging for a taco, then it buys us more time for the walkaway plan, something where he can just claim victory and leave. So until we see the bombs fall, and especially on those targets, I still have some hope, ironically, because he can't make a decision and stick with it.
But how is he able to retain power if it's such a problem now? If the threat to U.S. decision making, its own national security, is so extreme, how is he able to retain such a position?
Because our system is not designed for this. Our system is designed for the elected leader is the commander in chief, and he calls those shots. Our whole 250-year history has been, even with some bad presidents and some that have been terrible people, they've all been cognitively coherent, and that they could make decisions. You may not like them, but they were in control. And so the system is designed for hierarchical obedience and submission through the rule of law to obey lawful orders. So that's where everybody is. I'm talking from infancy up, is wired that's how the system works. It's never had a situation where there's a guy who is clearly cognitively declined in a different way than Joe Biden was, because that was also clear, but his was in a different sort. President Trump is harder to detect because when he's in front of the camera, when he's making speeches, he doesn't have these obvious things like Joe Biden did where, he'll zone out or his mouth will be hanging open or whatever. Trump's not like that. He seems to still be as cognitive, as coherent as he was before, because he made his whole brand on, confident or breaking the norms and being crazy and whatever. That was part of his shtick. He did that on purpose. Now that it's not on purpose, who can tell the difference? And nobody is willing to risk that. Look what happened to Thomas Massie. That was a very real pain and consequence to him going against President Trump politically. So who's going to follow in after this when President Trump's got whatever it was? I don't remember. Who knows? Somewhere between $20 and $40 million were worked against to get him defeated in that primary. And so President Trump always talks about all these people he puts up there for primaries, and like this massive number of them win. So people see, if you're on his good side, you have some success. If you get on his bad side and stand up, you're going to get fired or you're going to get defeated and knocked out of power. So right now, people see this on the inside. I guarantee you they do, but they're also afraid to act because they're like, I don't have the power to stand up to the president of the United States. And you would have to have the entire cabinet even to start the process of the 25th Amendment, which is such a long process. It probably would never work anyway, but it would certainly get people's attention. But President Trump has foreseen this problem. That's why he has only the most loyal people, not whether they're qualified for the job, but whether they're most loyal in all these positions, so that it's other than something just, I don't even know, otherworldly, off the charts of something that he wouldn't do. They're not going to do the 25th Amendment. They'll say, well, let Congress do that. Or if they want to do an impeachment, I guess they can do that. But who's going to take that risk of the people that he put in place, because they are by nature risk averse and they want his approval and his support because they want to continue to succeed. That's why they took the job. That leaves us in a very, very dangerous place.
So what do you think of then the Apache whole debacle? From my understanding, the Iranians were largely just doing what they said that they would, right? It's not a defense of the situation, but simply that they said if anything violates our airspace, if it breaches what we consider to be the terms that we've laid out, we're going to respond. And they did. And then we had to have this situation in the dark dead of night, getting the two service members, and then the U.S. response. One commentator I heard say yesterday that the U.S. response was not enough. It was not only attacking sort of sites that are not really right under international law, but moreover, it didn't really it was disproportionate to the event itself. What's your thoughts?
Okay, let's start at the beginning. You said that the Iranians did what they said they would do, but did they? Because you had some, unless you know something I don't know, and if they do, tell me. But I saw Abbas Araghchi imply something by saying, "Hey, if something flies in our territory, we may take care of it." But he didn't specifically say that they took credit for that. In fact, I had seen some other Iranian sources say they did not shoot the thing down. So Trump said from the White House a minute ago that they admitted it. I haven't seen that. And then let me just stop. Have you seen an
well, no, that's
admission?
the other thing that I was going to say, that there is also the potential that this was some kind of false flag.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying. But I haven't seen anything officially from Iran saying, yeah, we shot it down. They shouldn't have gotten our airspace. I haven't seen anything like that. So that's the first point. Then you start to say, okay, an AH-64, if you take a look at that thing, it is a very tight compartmented cockpit where there's one soldier in the front and then there's another right over his shoulder on the back. And they're very, very close. It's not like a two-seater situation. They're side by side. It's one like this, one over the shoulder. One's I think the gunner and the weapons operator, and the other one's the pilot that actually flies the weapon or the aircraft. If you look at that and listen to what's been told, there is no way on God's earth that's true. The first thing that was reported by CBS and CNN yesterday was that it was a Shahed drone that hit the Apache helicopter. Okay, first of all, a Shahed drone is not a maneuverable airframe that can, because it's autonomous, that it can't see a helicopter and then fly into it and direct itself onto it. It doesn't have that kind of capability. It can maneuver to get to a target. It can take a circuitous route, but it doesn't have the ability to intercept air-to-air airframes. There are drones that can do that, but we were told specifically that it was a Shahed drone. But then even if it was misidentified and it was something else, if you look at the cockpit, what President Trump said today, what he told Trey Yingst, is that the drone penetrated the cockpit and got stuck and then didn't blow up. But there was fire and smoke everywhere. And then the pilots got out. But when you look at an AH-64, that cockpit has to open from the front. So if anything penetrated and broke it, how would the cockpit ever open up? And these drones, especially the Shahed, is a point detonating. So it has this massive explosive warhead on the front of it. So if it hit anything, it's going to explode. And if it doesn't explode, it's huge. It's way too big to get in and lodge into the cockpit. If it hit it, even if it didn't have any explosions, it would have ripped the aircraft apart, especially a mid-air collision like that. There's no way that happens. The only way it's even theoretically possible is if it was a small drone and then somehow got wedged into the glass somewhere. But then you still have the problem. How are they going to get out? Because somehow they have to get, there's not like a fighter jet where there's ejection seats. You have to open the cockpit and then jump out. How are you going to jump out with the helicopter still in the air, presumably over water, apparently, and it not land on them or them successfully get out? How are you even going to do that? There's so many questions that make this really improbable that it sounds more like a bad script writer for a bad movie is trying to say this and making it sound so heroic. So all of that just tells me that the chances of this being true are just next to impossible, because it's just not, the things that they have described just can't happen in real life.
So let me clarify on the position of the Iranians and the downing of the Apache itself. So this is actually what was stated by Foreign Affairs Minister Abbas Araghchi on June 9th. He said that foreign forces, quote, are at a constant risk due to their own errors and should leave the region because Iran will never be, quote, hospitable to their presence. So a lot of people think that that is a direct reference to the Iranian attack on the Apache helicopter, but stops short of explicitly naming or threatening the US forces. It's the same tactic that they've used throughout quite a lot of the war, but also throughout various engagements in the past, right? It sort of goes back to their plausible deniability approach, albeit they've kind of abandoned that in the past year since the 12-day war and the whole disintegration of the proxy network or severe weakening. So does that convince you otherwise? Or
no, that's what I referred to a second ago by Abbas Araghchi, is that he said that, but that was a kind of an elusive sort of commentary. Definitely was not direct. By any means was it not direct. In the context, you may say, well, maybe that's what it meant. maybe he was trying to say, hey, listen, if anything does come in there, we're going to do that. But there's been a lot of other aircraft that have gone in and haven't been attacked other than MQ-9 Reaper drones, because apparently we've lost like 41 of those. So the drones they have continued to take down because that does reconnaissance. But this is the first known attack on a helicopter. And one would also ask, why was an AH-64 in a time when we're supposed to be in a ceasefire? What was it even doing over there anyway? Were there other aircraft with it? So many questions that I have. And so that comment by Abbas Araghchi, maybe that's what he meant. Maybe it's not. They left it diffused. It wasn't direct. But I have separately seen, and unfortunately I don't have it handy, where they said, no, we did not shoot it down. So there's conflicting information apparently coming out of the Iranian side. So bottom line is, whatever they say, it didn't happen the way that President Trump said. I will tell you that. There's almost no way. It's almost physically impossible for what was described to have actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm inclined to believe that. It comes from the foreign minister of the country. The other source you're thinking of is various different, but it's also state media, which, well, I mean, they might want to walk that back. But I think if the foreign minister is basically saying we did it, but we're not going to tell you explicitly, then I don't know. That somewhat convinces me otherwise. But all in all, though, what it means is that we're now back in this situation. I've just seen a report here from Axios saying that Trump has lost his mind. He's gone berserk, stating that he's fed up with the lack of progress. He's tired of being kept waiting, as they put it. But why did Trump think otherwise? Is the guy's just a delulu in your mind, and there's no point trying to sane wash why he might have chosen now to shift policy?
Well, the only thing that makes any sense is that he has come under just withering pressure from pro-Israeli sources, and that means pro-Israeli sources in his inner circle. And we know there's quite a few of those. You see them on American television all the time, especially on Fox News. You see Mike Pompeo, you see Jack Keane, you see Keith Kellogg, you see Rebecca Heinrichs, the Victoria Coates. I mean, a whole slew of folks. Dan Hoffman is another one. They're almost always saying that we need to go back to war. Jack Keane yesterday, or day before yesterday, I think it was, explicitly says, yep, there's no point in talking anymore. We have to go back and finish the job and do all this stuff, even though there is no rational path to finishing the job, or we would never have stopped it in the first place. This nonsense that people keep saying of, oh, well, we got 70% of it done here. We just got a couple more weeks we can go back and then we'll finish the job. That is a lie. Straight out of the depths of hell. There's no truth to it whatsoever. I mean, it's also irrational and illogical. Consider this. Are you telling me that you think the president of the United States, Donald Trump, and the Pentagon are going to say that they're 75% of the way to defeat, and all they got to do is just do that last 2 more weeks, and then they'll be devastated and destroyed, and they wouldn't have, and that they would have stopped and allowed them to recover and stuff? Of course they wouldn't have done that. Nobody would do that, especially not this crew. If they thought that they were that close, they would have hit the gas pedal. They would have gone even harder and dropped even more to completely finish them off. They didn't because they can't. That's the bottom line here. So going back and doing it now is not going to have any more of an impact than it did before, except that now Iran has promised to accelerate their response even outside of the region and beyond, to expand the war horizontally. And they're already, Hezbollah is fighting. They're talking about Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq is possibly. We know the Houthis, from their own statement just a few days ago, they're already claiming they're stopping Israeli shipping in the Red Sea. They could also expand that to the Bab el-Mandab, and then nobody's oil gets out there either. There's a lot of places for the Iranian side to escalate, and they won't do it unless we go back to fighting. So I'm hopeful that President Trump won't do that. If he's motivated by fear, I hope some other voices will get in that other ear, besides the Jack Keanes and the Mike Pompeos, and start telling him economically this is going to be devastating for you, and we can't recover from this. If the Iranians do what they promised to do, we can't recover from it. No tweet, no Truth Social, nothing is going to solve that problem if we do. And so we have to hope that sways the day.
Yeah, the trigger for Trump strikes on Iran was finally the U.S. helicopter. I'm just reading here from Barak Ravid of Axios. And that Trump had been growing more and more frustrated because the Iranians had not responded in this effective 2 weeks, Daniel, to his latest offer, right? It still hadn't arrived. But that makes me feel like it's just part of the Iranian strategy. Put as much pressure on Trump as possible by just eking out the time frame as long as possible, be as drawn out as possible, because ultimately the Trump administration, or Trump just personally, and his time horizon, the amount of time he has.
Well, see, I look at it slightly different, not completely different.
How do you see it?
But it's not that they're trying to drag it out, the Iranian side, is that they recognize that they have the leverage. And they're saying, look, we'll make a deal today if it includes these things, because those are what we feel like we need to have, and we have the leverage to compel them. If you don't get it, we're just not going to make a deal. We're not going to agree to something that we have the leverage to avoid. And if that takes another month, if that takes another year, 3 years, I think that the Iranian side is ready to pay that price, and they know that we can't pay that price over the same amount of time. Iran can suffer, and suffer egregiously, and I think they have calculated that we can't, that they can endure this. It's a gamble, it's a risk, but I think that they rightfully have suggested that we can do that. So it's not that they're dragging it out, it's that they're saying, because they're not changing their terms. If anything, they're adding to them and making them more difficult for us, because they think they can. I mean, that's how it's working right now. And normally that's how it always works. The side that has the leverage can make the demands on the other side. But in this case, the side that doesn't have the leverage, just because we've exposed that we don't have the leverage militarily, that's what we've always had as our ace in the hole. But now that ace didn't work, and we can't compel them to do it. Now then, they have proven that, so that they have neutralized that card. Now then, what card do we have to play? And it's the economic card, but they've got some big economic cards too that they can play. So they have more leverage and more potential leverage than we do. So I think that they're holding out that all these terms that they say, release of the frozen assets first, release of the sanctions on our energy infrastructure, removal of your blockade, and recognition that we're going to remain in control of the strait. And one of the most difficult and emotional ones is the war against Lebanon has to come in. Hezbollah in Lebanon has to come to an end too. They're saying those 5 things are non-negotiable, and they think they have the leverage to compel them. So they're not dragging it out. They're just having high demands and going to say, who's going to blink?
Yeah, I mean, I still think that they have a sense of general strategic endurance, strategic patience that they think that they can leverage. But certainly, and out of those elements that you've identified, to me, I think that the Lebanese issue is an actual red line for them. The Hormuz and nuclear enrichment files are something that they're willing to negotiate on, albeit very limitedly. But I think the Lebanon and continued actions of the Israeli government are a genuine no-go. We are not going to accept this. And I think, Daniel, what's really interesting or significant is that the Iranians, for the first time in my memory, have struck and taken military action on behalf of the third party. Yeah. Usually it's the other way around, but they did this. And and I think there was a great piece written on this by Apache, who we have on the show quite a lot. And he said that this is a huge shift in Iran's foreign and military doctrine. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I believe I saw this morning, I've been swamped with shows, so I haven't been able to follow it up too much, but I think I saw that some Iranian officials and official statements have indicated that the Gaza is now added to the list, and the Palestinians in Gaza, not even just in general for Palestinians, but that we have to have a ceasefire in Lebanon and a ceasefire in Gaza because all of the people now are going to matter. So I don't know for sure if that's the case. I think I saw that this morning, but it does show that because they have increasing confidence that they have the leverage and they have these additional cards they can play if they need to. I think they feel like they have the ability to make these threats. And again, I cannot emphasize enough, we played our ace in the hole first. And that was with the military card, thinking we could just blow them out of the water and just destroy them and make them, come begging for terms. And then that didn't happen. They saw that they were able to endure that. They neutralized that ace. And now we don't have any more aces to play. They do. They still have some more aces, like striking the other infrastructure, the other energy infrastructure in the Gulf, which they had largely left untouched. There's a lot of other targets they could go after. So I think that they say, hey, if you want to play a game of chicken on a national or strategic level, we're willing to play it. And I think that they have shown that now then, because of all the damage that we've already caused and the assassination of their senior leader and all these other generals that have been killed, and the destruction of their surface fleets, the big ones anyway, that they're like, hey, we've lost so much, but we've withstood it, and we are not going to back down now, because we see that what's left, these underground missile bunkers, the production facilities with their drones underneath the surface of these mountains that we can't get at. We've proven we can't get at it. They can repair what damage that we do to the exit holes, et cetera. And I think that they're saying, yeah, we've got more cards than you do now, so we're in the driver's shot. And I think they're playing that. And we haven't come to that recognition yet that we played our best cards first and they were neutralized, and we don't have any more good cards. So we have some cards. We have some 10s and some 8s and whatever. I mean, we do still have a pretty powerful military, and we can definitely blow a bunch of stuff up and kill a bunch of people in Iran. But in the things that matter, that would also prompt them to start playing their higher cards, and that's where you get the problem.
Oh, so this isn't about the Iranian people, Daniel?
Yeah. It's all about freedom, man. We just want to bring freedom to the. Oh yeah, we forgot about that.
Yeah, no. Anyway, no. Let's brush aside from that. Okay, but I'm curious also on your thoughts, Daniel, about just generally the Strait of Hormuz more broadly. We had Sal of what's going on with shipping yesterday. Great deep dive with him on the sort of maritime elements, but from a military standpoint, like, when you look at the situation of the US and these continued flare-ups, we haven't spoken for a couple of weeks, so there's been a few. What does that tell you about the state of control, or just generally of the US operations in the area from your experience? And also, where are we with stockpiles? Like, how sustainable is this from that element?
Well, I mean, the fact that this is whatever it is, 103, third day of the war since the war started, something like that. And the control of the Strait of Hormuz still resides, despite what President Trump just Truth Socialed, in the hands of the Iranian side. They're the ones that decide if any of the GCC countries get to send their oil out or not. And so that tells you everything you need to know. That's the one thing you can't hide behind. President Trump can put something ridiculous on Truth Social like that and claim that I have control of it. Okay, well then where is the flow of oil? You have control of it. How come there? Don't tell me some fiction that 100 million barrels of oil have gone through, because we see the ship trackers and they can be counted. We know how many haven't gone through. We know that there's whatever is like 2,000 ships that are still stuck in the area right there. Show us where there's a flow of, okay, so was it 100, 130 per day before the war started? Show us where it's like 50 or 75, something like that, that you have control and you get to decide who comes out. And of course, there is none. I think it's like 10 or 12, I think is the most that goes out on a single day. And most of those are from the Iranian side because they have coordination with the IRGC and they've gotten through. So I don't know. I'm sure some ships have gotten through, but I'm almost certain that that's just a fictitious number that he threw out there, because most people, they don't know. They're not going to have any way to know and independently confirm it. But what we do know is that the strait is blocked. So in a military perspective, that still remains the number one leverage and card that the Iranian side's hold. And as long as they keep that traffic shut off and any meaningful number, then this war is going to continue on, and we're going to be forced to, at some point, just concede to reality, because going back to military, firing a bunch of targets is not absolutely zero chance that that's going to cause the Iranian side to say, okay, uncle, as Trump calls it, fine, we'll just give you what you want and just please leave us alone, because they know that'll never happen. It would be suicidal for them to do so. It would be suicidal for their leaders to agree to something like that. I think that would cause the people to revolt. Maybe the IRGC to revolt if their leaders actually gave into something like that because of a few more bombs. And it's irrational to think that that's going to happen, and I don't think that it's going to. So militarily, there just hadn't been much change in the last 101 days.
Let me just double check how we're doing for time with you.
Yeah, I'm getting close. I got about 3 or 4 more minutes.
All right, good. So we've just seen talks also from the Qatari side, Daniel. So the Qataris have been pushing for this. You know, there seems to be efforts on the diplomatic side, but the Trump administration is hell-bent on undertaking what they call a proportionate response, as I alluded to earlier. What do you think happens next? Are we actually going to see these strikes or not? I'm still on the fence. I think it's part of this sometimes misdirection, deliberate sort of escalate to de-escalate sort of thing. Or do you think we could actually follow through and we're back in complete...
one of the reasons I keep checking back to True Social is because Trump has had at least, as I recall, at least 2 cases in this war to where he had threatened that something big was coming. And then at the last minute, he comes in and says, well, I've got a deal. I've been worked out with something and we have agreed, or I think that they need more time. They're confused on the Iranian side. They don't know who's charged. So I need to give them more time. We're this close to a deal. And so we need to, he's done that on a couple of occasions.
But Daniel, if I may, just on that point, the last time he said, praise be to Allah, there was a significant military move, wasn't there? So this is his second time. So I worry that he's going to do that. For
he did say that too. So I, unfortunately, in what I believe is the state of mind of the President Trump, you can't take anything that like, oh, well, this means this, because it could change from minute to minute. I mean, it's weird that he even said that. I don't, it defies any kind of cognition and logic anyway. And, this idea that he's actually, playing 3D chess and he's sending these signals, whatever, I don't see any evidence of that. What I see a lot of evidence is that he cannot make his mind up on anything. That's why I say Robert Barnes said they called him a decision or a deal incapable. He can't make any kind of a deal or a decision except that's why I hope that he doesn't make this one call to tell the military to go ahead and strike anyway, even though the military at the senior level, I'm told, are all saying this is not accomplishable militarily. We don't have the resources to bring the country, their political leadership, to submission. We just don't have it. And if you try, it won't work, but it will spawn all these other attacks. So I hope that'll work. I saw what he said, but my hope is that he won't do it. I can't say he won't. My gut tells me there's about a 75% chance he backs out and calls something else and says we're close to a deal again, whatever, because I think that he knows, and if he's guided by fear, he realizes if that threshold is crossed, you can never come back from it, because that will take it up a whole new level from where it has been. And I really hope that that's what happens.
Likewise, but simultaneously, Hegseth was in another part of the US earlier, meeting troops, talking about Cuba. So you may well be seeing the United States taking moves on Cuba. He was in Guantanamo Bay earlier today. So are we going to see operations over Cuba simultaneously with this? Who knows? But Daniel Davis, thank you so much. Daniel Davis Deep Dive, always a pleasure. I look forward to having you back very soon, and hopefully in better circumstances. But yeah, we always seem to get you on before the crisis. We preempt the crisis and then it unfolds. But thanks very much for your time. I'm going to stay on and just sort of debrief. And
all right. See you next time.
Well, Daniel. Take care. All right, guys, that was Daniel Davis, a reoccurring guest, a regular, someone who I think speaks from a lot of experience and with a degree of, caution, a well-deserved and experienced set of concerns and cautions there. I differ with him very rarely, but on this case, I do think the Iranians are deliberately drawing this out. I think that they have a deliberate intention to punish the Trump administration for trying to punish Iran. Ultimately, the Iranians are in a much better position, not completely, of course, the economy is reeling, but in a sort of longevity or from a war of attrition, especially one that is indirect, right? If this was a ground offensive, if this was much more comprehensive than a naval blockade or something, then it would be a much worse situation for the Iranians. But because this is a war being fought at a distance, proximity, and geography is very important, especially around the Strait of Hormuz, the Iranians are able to project power and dig in, and obviously what's their backyard. They know exactly what to do, how to do it, and this all benefits the Iranians, the IRGC, in a way it doesn't. Even if the US is the most powerful, you can watch my stream from earlier where I was talking about the Strait of Hormuz and the disproportionate role the United States has had for years, ever since the Second World War, of being the guarantor of maritime security. You just need to look up the Somalian pirates example from the late 2000s, 2011, to demonstrate how the United States was able to conjure up support for a multinational task force against the Somalian pirates, much like it did sort of equivalent of the Gulf War. So in this regard, I think that Daniel Davis is Colonel Davis is very astute. I disagree with him on certain other things. Sometimes I think we need to be more hawkish than he is, say, on Russia, Ukraine. He fears the idea of Putin using a nuke, which I don't, because I understand Russia, I think, more, and Putin better than Daniel. But he understands military doctrine better than I do. And in this case, as I say, I think the Iranians are drawing this out deliberately. They have a certain endurance that the Trump administration, and more specifically the American electorate and West, doesn't, for casualties or for just just suffering. The Iranians and the Russians are quite similar in this way, in that they're both willing to suffer, to endure hardship. Whilst the average Iranian person may not be wanting to do that, they're like, well, we don't welcome how the war has changed our country, what it's done to our lives and everything. So I think that's probably one of the main areas I disagreed with him. But again, it's very minor. And I'm still on the fence. If you want my quick take, I'm on the fence that Trump's actually going to follow through on this. I really hope he doesn't, because I really bored of this war. No more so than the Iranian people. But I think we're all bored of this war. It's so stupid. The war in Ukraine is even more sort of, there's more substance to that one because it's actual war contra. This one was just a war of choice by Trump. It's completely unnecessary, and it doesn't achieve anything. For Ukraine, if they win, then they achieve a sizable demonstration of a pushback against the great power and protection of their sovereignty and of broader European and NATO, whatever, space and territorial integrity. But for this, it's completely absurd. And so I wonder whether he's just going to follow through on it. To be honest, when you look at the context that it was said in, it's one of those roundups Trump does every lunchtime. He gathers all the press in the room. He jumps from people to people. He's asking questions or shutting people down. He's taking questions. He's directing. He's being a showman. And that's when he says some of his most provocative statements. But in my mind, he hasn't always followed through on them. And in this regard, I don't know whether he's going to. That isn't a call before any of you say, well, you got it wrong. I'm not saying he isn't. I really hope he doesn't. And part of me thinks that it might just be a bluff to try and up the pressure to get the Iranians to give a response. They did the strikes yesterday. And again, one last thing about these strikes, they were so stupid. The Americans call them proportionate. They weren't proportionate. You're striking non-military targets. A dam is not a military target. It's a one that supplies 20,000 people in the nearby city, small city. And unless it's directly related to sort of funding a nuclear reactor or a nuclear project, like, there is no justification for that. And it makes full sense why the Iranians decided to respond, or which the Iranians targeted military sites. Again, this isn't a defense of the IRGC or their actions, but you cannot say that the Americans did, or CENTCOM or the Trump administration identified the right targets. They are not going about this cleanly, and it's only going to be a mess. So, in my mind, I just think that this is only going to get worse. I'm extremely concerned about the war getting picked up again, and I think it all comes back down to Lebanon as well, right? Iran has been, Trump is pissed off that Tehran wasn't giving him a response to his peace deal suggestion. But what's changed in that time? What's changed in that time is that the Israelis have been more and more active in Lebanon. So the two things, whilst causation, they are correlated. And I think there's a very strong correlation here, right? That the Israelis upping their military operations in Lebanon has increasingly dissuaded the Iranians from being willing to engage, and therefore Trump sees them as dragging their feet or unwilling to engage diplomatically. The whole thing just becomes a complete shit show, just a complete clusterfuck. One side is doing something else, which is hindering the other side, and the other one is misinterpreting or taking the wrong end of the stick. But it all boils down to the fact that if the Israelis stop what's happening in Lebanon, then the Iranians more likely would just come and be like, okay, we're ready to sign this MOU, right? Ultimately, the strikes on Tuesday evening were intended to restore some kind of leverage, but be calibrated such by the Iranians that no one would be killed and the possibility of a deal would not be foreclosed, right? That's coming from both the Americans and the Iranians in their mindset. It's like the 12-day war. It's like when they struck Qatar and the massive base there, right? They literally told the Americans, we're going to hit this base, but we don't want anyone killed. So take all your people out so that we can symbolically strike back, but not lead to a continued downward spiral or the escalation ladder, etc., etc. Meanwhile, the Qataris have been holding talks in Tehran of trying to get the negotiations back on track and close any remaining gaps. They met again today, and that's whilst Trump has made these threats. We're going to hit them hard, but the Qataris have been saying that the atmosphere, the sentiment in Tehran is pretty bleak. It's pretty low. They're not very impressed with Trump. They just can't trust him. And so, if Trump wants to actually see progress, then he needs to, I think what we're seeing is Trump revert to coercion again, because he's tried the sort of, weeks of, well, we're being nice, but okay, we're just going to resort to threats again. It's a bit like sort of Putin or Russia only responds to hard power or force. So maybe Trump's trying the stick instead of the carrot or whatever, the stick and fruit. Trump basically said, just looking here, he had said that they'd been playing us for suckers and tapping us along. That's why I said drawing out in the case with Daniel. But Iran's president countered, saying that Trump's threats showed not strength, but, quote, desperation. And I mean, personally, I agree. I agree with both, in that I do think the Iranians are tapping them along, but I also think that Trump's constant emphasis on an imminent deal is desperate. So the state of play is essentially Trump's envoys and regional mediators, specifically the Qataris in this case, will be working to patch this deal together if it's even possible. But it all depends on whether Trump can be bothered anymore. What's unclear is that the US hasn't determined whether Iran intentionally brought the chopper down. Even if the US Apache and Iranian drone strike was accidental, the US had to respond to show it didn't accept any Iranian actions. Again, it's all performative at this point. It's not even about responding to sort of show and protect American personnel. It's literally just, if we don't respond, it makes us look weak and negatively influences our position. But both officials have made it clear that the US saw its strikes as proportionate. I'm just reading a quote here. Yeah, they targeted radar and drone systems, but, well, clearly they didn't, because they also struck it down. So I don't know who these officials are. Ultimately, these talks are going to continue. US and officials held parallel talks, not together, but parallel side by side. It's so that they hold talks, and then the Qataris, or in the past the Omanis, run between each room. They literally, I've been in the building where they held the talks in February, and they literally have the US delegation in this room and then the Iranian delegation in the other room, and they're sitting facing each other, but at an empty table with a wall in the middle. And then the third party, i.e. Iran, is literally delivering the hand. It's like being in the 1920s or something. It's like they're delivering handwritten notes. Sort of, it's like you're in class in school, and you've got a handwritten note you've got in class, and you want to deliver it covertly. So they take the note, they pass it around, and this is literally how we're doing diplomacy. There's a reason diplomacy is called the second oldest career in the world. I'll let you guess what the first is. But yeah, this is literally how to do it. And the bottom line of this is the Qataris have tried multiple times, including now, to arrange trilateral meetings to directly negotiate, partially because I think that people are getting fed up of getting their steps in and running like morons. But yeah, it's not going anywhere. And so I think the hope is the deal is still on the table, according to one US official, but the US is ready to make Iran pay this price if they continue to drag their feet. So the US is, again, I think they're just playing hardball, and ultimately the United States is trying to use that approach to get the Iranians to come round to at least responding to their talks. I think if the Iranians send their response in terms of their position on the peace proposals that Trump laid out a couple of weeks ago, then you might get somewhere. But yeah, and some of you not believing me, it's genuinely true. It's genuinely true. At least in the UN, you have specific buildings in the Palais de National or whatever, the massive building just in Geneva. Although I don't know if they're negotiating directly in the main building, but maybe it was in a hotel. But you have some rooms where they have in the past, where they'll have two sets of big oak tables or beautiful old hardware and furniture and furnishings. And then, you've seen the pictures of people. They'll, let me just bring up let me just bring up a sort of an image of a peace delegation or something like this. So normally how peace delegations are done is they sit around in one room, obviously, and they get things directly face to face. So this is Ukraine meeting with Witkoff, if that's Witkoff or whoever that is. But this is how they'll often be done. So this is 2026. So this is a small scale one, but this is essentially what it's supposed to be if it loads. Yeah, so this is what it's supposed to be, Ukrainian, Russian, and then you've got like the mediators in the middle. Witkoff there, Jared Kushner, I think that's Jared Kushner, right? And then you've got the Ukrainian delegation and the Russian delegation. And then they talk. Maybe they talk in English, maybe they don't talk in Russian because the Ukrainians refuse to do it. But that's essentially how you do it. You are in the same room and you're talking to one another in that way. In the past, it would be, okay, here's a slightly bigger one. So you'll have a big, it's a hotel room. It's literally just somewhere. This is in Istanbul. So this is July 2025. And you can see, so they sit on one side, the Turks are in the middle, and then you've got this one, and you've got obviously we don't know who everyone is. Is that Lavrov? No, that's not Lavrov. But yeah, you've got the two negotiators and the key negotiators. I'm trying to find if there's another version. Let's see if we can bring USA, because they often do it indirectly. Yeah. So you're not going to find an image of this sitting in separate rooms, but that's literally what they do. And they sit and it's what the strangest thing. I remember being in there as a third party once, like very junior, taking notes essentially, or just watching us, because I was part of an organization that helps engage in conflict resolution, advise different, diplomatic missions in the UN as part of it. And one of the things that we might be there because we're advising one team on the issue. So this was to do with Ethiopia and Africa. And you're sitting in the back, and initially no one comes in, but they're all sitting lined up. So they're just sort of sitting there, and they continue to act as though someone's there. So I get the feeling that that's sort of how the Americans and the Iranians would do this. Extremely strange stuff, to be honest, peace talks. And people just sort of think there's a couple of people having a cup of coffee or meeting. No, it's incredibly bureaucratic. It's incredibly slow. And it's so much just based on whether you like the other person. Forget all the drama around tech and drones and stuff. Yeah, sure. Modern warfare. I've just seen someone make that comment. Drones are changing warfare, but the biggest single thing that will change diplomacy is if we ever learn emotional intelligence, compassion, psychological manipulation. That's just it. It's all about how well you can read people and the direct personal relationships. That's one of the biggest things I've always learned from psychology, and why I find the particular personal relationships between Trump and Xi, Trump and Putin, Putin and Xi, Modi and Trump, whoever, incredibly fascinating. All the body language, the way that they phrase things, but also the way that they deliver it. All very important. But anyway, guys, I'm going to jump off. I've got another one joining. We've got Ali Brahimi rejoining the show at 9 p.m. So in 40 minutes. So be sure to join us for that one. And we are going to have another guest coming back as well, Amir Hajani, who's been on the program a couple of times in the past, but he hasn't been for a while, I think, at this point. Let me just post a link to the upcoming one at 9. You'll be able to hear from Alia and myself again. Maybe there won't be much updates, but we're going to do it nonetheless. But yeah, it's in the comments, guys. So notify yourself, ring the bell, and we'll see you all in 45 minutes.